So we're here today for a virtual reading with poets Catherine Arnold and Richard Smith. I think, Richard, you're going to be up first. So I'm going to go ahead and read your bio a little bit and then hand off to you if that works. Richard Smith's first book, Not a Soul But Us, won the 2021 Mary Sarton, New Hampshire Poetry Prize and was released in 2022 by Bauhan Publishing. I hope I said Bauhan right. The book is a story in sonnets about a 12-year-old shepherd boy orphaned and abandoned during the mid-14th century plague pandemic. In spring 2026, Bauhan will publish Richard's Beyond Where Words Can Go, another historical narrative in sonnets, tracing a group of Tudor-era Benedictine monks before, during, and after Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries. Richard is a psychologist with a clinical practice in Washington, D.C. Richard, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm so happy to hand the microphone, the spotlight, over to you.
Thank you, Zach, and thanks for having us. I think this is my third event with you folks. It's always a pleasure. So the book I'm going to read from tonight is set in England in the early and mid 1500s, which is a really interesting period when things are transitioning from what historians call the late medieval era to the early modern era. And basically that means there's an enormous amount of turbulence going on. One thing I like about that particular period, late Middle Ages, early modern period, is that it is close enough to us culturally that we can find some entry points, and yet if we're honest and careful, it's also alien enough. We have to really stretch our imaginations to think what life might have been like then. And just a few examples to try to make that clear. Europe, of course, was Catholic, and there was one religious institution pretty much over everybody, which sounds kind of oppressive. But if you think of it from another perspective, imagine a sense that everyone believes the same thing because it's true, and it involves a benevolent deity watching over everyone. It could, in good ways, feel like a protective dome arching over the earth. Another common thing, confession, okay? Catholic confession, you go to the church, you confess your sins to the priest, he gives you some penances to do, says some prayers, and you're washed clean of sin. That to us might sound quite odd, but imagine the relief you'd feel walking out of a church. This priest you see every day in the village having just told you you're clean. You're right with God at the moment. Third element of the culture was the belief in purgatory. Most people die with some sins on their heads, and that means they have to go to this sort of waiting room before heaven, get their sins burned off, suffer maybe a couple thousand years. But if people still on earth said prayers for them or paid priests or monks to say prayers and give masses, the time in purgatory should be shortened. That may sound odd to us, but imagine thinking you can help alleviate a loved one's suffering after they're dead. So along with all the darkness of the period, we have to also remember the light and the joy. And one place, obviously, if you've ever read Chaucer, he's funny, but I also love medieval manuscripts. Of course, all their books were handwritten, hand decorated, and they often had in the margins very interesting little illustrations. I'm going to show you some from a book called The Rutland Psalter, which was made probably in London in the mid 1200s. Okay, here we have a peasant harvesting grain. You can see his underwear a little bit. Here is another peasant harvesting grain. You can see more of his underwear. This peasant is harvesting grain wearing only his underwear. I don't know quite what these two guys are doing. It looks like some kind of fight, but also like they're playing a game, and this guy is spewing up the decorations that'll go up the left-hand column of the page. Here's a guy being dragged away by a kind of dragon figure. Here's a similar dragon figure about to make out with a camel. Another two guys doing something interesting. I can see when Guy on the right might be pulling out his dagger. More fighting. The whole purpose of this seems to be exposing people's underwear. I don't know what they're doing. Um, it's interesting though. Here's a chicken man. Here's a sort of duck man playing musical instruments. Here's a man in his underwear wearing, thrusting a spear at a snail. I don't know. Um, Here's a man pointing at a woman's butt. This to me looks kind of like Jesus mooning, but that's not possible. Some more fighting. Um, Chess. There's some chess in my book, which you'll hear about. Well, one of the guys, of course, is playing chess in his underpants. And then here's a little necklace demon shooting an arrow into the butt of a man who seems to have a fishtail. So these to me look pretty much like um, the drawings of a goofy and gifted child. And that would be the protagonist and narrator of the book I'm about to read from. His name is Simon. He was left at birth on the threshold of a monastery and was raised there by the monks. So imagine a tiny kid walking around among all these men in long black robes. Um, I'm going to read a section that starts with the beginning of his life and goes to when he's about 15. His name is Simon. Just a few other things to know, other characters that you would have met if you'd been reading the book from the beginning. Um, the abbot of the monastery is named Walter. He's Simon's primary mentor. Gilbert is in charge of manuscript copying and illustration. Um, Hugh runs the infirmary. Martin is a monk who sees demons everywhere. Edmund is a monk who's pretty cranky and irritable and unhappy. Piers, another monk, is the barber. He's very jolly. And then one last detail, Compline, which is mentioned here, is the last of the 8 worship services held before the monks went to bed for the first time. They also then get up at midnight and do some more worship services and go back to bed. So that's really the background, but this is Simon telling us how his life began. I learned to walk amid a grove of trees. The tall black trunks would mill about. I'd crawl till I found someone standing still, then seize his robe and lever myself up, then fall, then rise and try to step. Most brothers smiled and helped me. Some would even lift me high and pass me backward, forward, all the while exclaiming, "Here's that wiggle bundle I was looking for." As I got older, I'd find psalms to quote. God's angels always go with you to keep you safe. Their hands will guide your steps. You'll never even stub your toe. And Walter'd laugh. Now, show us. Can you walk as steadily and quickly as you talk? I'd trot along behind the brothers, love-struck as a puppy, memorizing all they said and did. Real life went on above my head. I wanted it. So I installed myself at every service, day or night, joined Walter teaching novices, helped Hugh concoct his remedies, and learned to write and draw with Gilbert. Such a lumpy stew of English, Latin, psalms, herbs, ink. At first it came out all mixed up, but gradually my mind grasped what belonged with what. The thirst to understand got more acute in me each year. It never seemed the least bit odd that I should grow up so entwined with God. At times, of course, I wanted just to skip around in circles. Gilbert would apply a dab of red paint to my fingertip and tell me what to mark. The cabinet by Hugh's door, the kitchen table, every horse stall. Sometimes Walter'd say, "Your brains have slipped down to your feet. Your toes are wild. Let's force those brains right back where they belong." He flipped me upside down, skull dangling, feet held high, and swung me back and forth until my head felt right again. And then I'd sit there by his side. He'd wait in case I was upset or scared or sad. He'd drape his arm around my shoulders. We would talk. I'd settle down. The dinner reading was St. Matthew. I was getting bored. Aminadab begat Nahshon, Nahshon begat Salmon. I tried to sit still, failed, bounced up from where I sat. But who begat me? Brother Edmund sneered. You weren't begotten, you were bred. And then just spat out on our doorstep. Walter cleared his throat and tapped his chin 3 times, which meant, stay quiet, later I'll explain. Time froze. Till someone farted. Gilbert waved his hand. Me, mea culpa. Walter held his nose. No, tua maxima culpa, sir. He fanned the air. Some brothers laughed, and time moved on. And Eleazar he begat Mathan. I searched out Walter later. Someone spat me out, I asked. Oh, Simon, Walter said. You're worried that the way we found you at our gate was a mistake? I shook my head, then nodded. Walter stood me on a chair and pointed at the sparrow's nest above the cupboard. Tiny beaks gaped at the air. The mother flew in, filled them. Does God love those hatchlings? Walter asked, and so he told their parents how to raise them. I felt words wake up inside me. Are not sparrows sold 2 for a penny? Still God sees each bird that falls to earth. Don't worry, you're worth more than sparrows. Did God bring me to your door? I think so, Walter said. He knew we'd care for you. He reached his arm around my back. I leaned in close. He ruffled up my hair. Refugium, Latin for refuge. Each night, as skies went black at Compline, just before we slept, we'd sing, I tell you, God, you are my guardian, my refuge. In the shadow of your wings, I know I'm safe. The voices of the men, how Walter kept an eye on me, the words the psalmist left us, I felt wanted, well attended, hovered over like a bird that can't yet fly. I liked to hear the bell that told us all to bed. The day'd been spent just as it should. Things meant just what they meant. But sometimes what the psalm said not to fear would haunt my thoughts. The terror stalking through the night, the arrow whistling past your ear in daylight, goblins lurking next to you in pitch black dark, the demon who attacks at noon. I'd wake up crying. Gilbert would come pat my racing heart and stroke my back. It was a dream. But Martin says there could be demons. He'd say, Martin's just a flea. Now think, is all that you imagine real? Our graveyard, is it really Troy? Or me, am I in fact a giant goose? I'd feel him tuck the blanket close against my chest. He understood what helped put me at rest. A guest would like to meet you. Walter led me up into the Abbey's parlor, where a woman stood arranging people, red and white, strange little people, on a square of wood. My sister, Lady Marjorie. I did my best to bow. She smiled. I thought you might like chess. She gently beckoned me. This is our family set, but she has brought it here for us, said Walter. One small man was gnawing on his shield. The other 3 with shields weren't hungry. One queen pressed her hand against her cheek, one didn't. I could see that no 2 pieces looked just quite the same. That made me certain I would like this game. While Gilbert wrote, I'd sketch and paint on scraps of parchment. Over time, my pictures made him laugh less, gaze more. Then he said, perhaps you'd help to fill these margins. And he laid full pages, psalms, before me. I could read by then. Their very tongues will undermine them. As he walked, stooped low, a man's huge feet trod on his dangling tongue. He tripped, flipped, spine slammed hard against the ground. You're where I hide. 2 giant hands met like a tent to guard a huddled soul. Their mouths tell lies. Inside, asp venom lurks. A man's lips spread apart. Out curled a snake that slithered up the page and tried to squeeze the life out of an H. Once I'd begun, I found it hard to stop. At midnight, I arise to sing your praise. A man stood by his bed, his face a clock, with both hands aimed at 12. I am amazed by your great kindness. I'm kept safe by you in this strong place. A man wrapped blankets round a drowsing baby. Gilbert whispered to himself, Misericordia, loving kindness in Latin. The sound of that word lingered like a scent. Then everything fell still. I wasn't scared. I didn't care what all this silence meant. I just felt joy as calm as sleep. Then there was gone, and here was back. And I could see that Gilbert had been contemplating me. The first time I watched Walter playing chess, I thought that he'd just play. The queens would chat, the knights would joust, the bishops would all bless the pawns. But there were rules. For weeks, I sat deciphering the game till I could glean who might do what. If Walter moved his rook 3 squares ahead, then Hugh'd advance his queen or maybe slide his bishop up. But look, Walter's knight should take that pawn. Hugh's king would be entrapped. But Walter didn't see, and it was his turn now. The only thing I thought to do was neigh. He glanced at me, then smiled, then moved his knight, and Hugh's king died. Next time, Hugh said, the boy sits on my side. But soon I sat on my own side. Just 10 moves in, and Piers's king lay slaughtered. Piers guffawed. When Martin lost, he claimed there'd been 2 demons whispering guidance in my ears. Hugh's king met sudden tragedy. Hugh reached across to check my forehead. Has your mind caught fire? And Walter always worked to teach me tactics. Sulk as if I'm disinclined to think, make nonsense plays as decoys to distract, or dawdle on a trivial move while plotting onslaught. Years passed. Then, I knew this day would come, he said. I think that you've learned every trick I've got. I've never had a worthier foe. I felt both proud and sad. Our midnight chant. The deer take refuge high up in the hilltops, hedgehogs down among the stones. We bowed, we prayed, we read. And I began to feel what, since I was quite young, I'd called the tug toward God. A cloud of calm, a sense of being carried, sweet relief from thought, on everything that hurt a balm. To rest in God, no doctrine, no belief, no text, no prayer, no hymn, no words, no rites. No, none of these could match that soundless pause when God enfolded me within his light. I knew that knowing we can't know God was the most important thing that I could know. Our ignorance is cause for joy, not woe. I still played chess with Walter, still improved. Then one day Edmund scowled, took Walter's chair, said, not this brat, arranged the board and moved. My mind flew forward. Was he unaware what he was making possible? I nudged a pawn ahead to clear a path. Once more he moved the wrong pawn. I liked being misjudged. My queen slumped forward slantwise. Before I said it, checkmate, he submitted. He surrendered. He stood up, not looking cross, just tired, and slumped away. He needed me still smaller, weaker, crushable. He lost not just a game of chess. It felt like sin. I should have let the poor man win. That might be kindness, Walter said when I explained my thought. As abbot, he heard all of our confessions. I would never pry, just wait for clues, not one of which could fall without my storing it in memory. We all take in both light and dark, his mind went strolling. It has always seemed to me our choices count, but also we're inclined toward dark or light by nature. Some folk bear a burden that exhausts them. Edmund's eyes were often red and weak. But is that fair, I asked, that burden? Walter paused, surprised. It rarely took this long for him to speak. At last he said, It's time I taught you Greek. One day, in private, I reached up to pick my nose and found hair sprouting just below my nostrils. Soon it cropped up elsewhere, thick and pointless. How I spoke went rough and low. My body didn't seem like mine, too tall, too clumsy, always flailing. Brother peers began to shade my face along with all the others. They'd have teased me in past years, but lately they'd been wary. There were no more shoulder rides or wrestling, no more being tucked in or checked for made-up fevers, no more squeezing close by Walter's side and seeing as he might see. These men were still my friends, but I began to sense how childhood ends. Okay, thank you. Back to you, Zach.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. And now let me pull up my notes to introduce our next reader of the evening. Catherine Arnold grew up in Cheshire in the northwest of England. Having fallen in love with painting, she moved to the United States to study at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. After graduating from the MFA program, she exhibited and taught widely, receiving awards from the Royal Academy of Arts, Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture, Flintridge Foundation, and the Ludwig Vogelstein Foundation. While making her living as an artist, she also wrote, torn between the equally seductive demands of words and color. Over the years, the need to write became increasingly urgent. Arnold's poems and prose have appeared in the Cincinnati Review, the Gettysburg Review, Natural Bridge, the Ekphrastic Review, and Prairie Schooner, among other publications. Her debut collection, Receipt for Lost Words, was awarded the 2022 May Sarton, New Hampshire Poetry Prize and published by Bauhan Publishing. Arnold lives with her family in Western Massachusetts. Catherine, I'm going to hand off to you now.
Thank you, Zach, and thank you, Richard, for wonderfully vivid reading, especially the beautiful ending. So I'm going to jump right in with a couple of poems. They can be considered separately or as a pair, and they're from the Awe and Wonder section of the book. Poems inspired by a sense of awe. No wonder. 1. I run along the sand with my mouth open, hooting, singing it all up, the wonder, digging it out of the wet sand with my little shovel, the warming questions, the puzzles, scooping them up. I'm 4 years old. This is before school comes to mangle my private soul, before it attacks, making the unimportant urgent and cruel, taking everything that used to matter, burying it cold, lies spreading like gravy, ladle after ladle. 2. I'm in the classroom. I'm 9 years old. My sparkling hands unvoiced because I can't read, can't write. I'm slow. Put your pail away, your shovel down, turn back to the long dust, plod. Practice tying the laces of your shoes, measure earthworms and other useful things. Sieve off the beauty, because nothing mysterious can be allowed to traitor through. It's time to enter the gates of the school. Hang your wonder up, over there, on the peg beside your coat. And the second poem is called Wonder. She is touching light. Now she presses speak, pressing the bar that converts the letters into sound, as if it's a matter of persuasion. It's all there, torching for the illuminated screen. Sometimes when she types, I laugh, pure wonder. Then it's her turn. The swimming giggle, the rollicking river squiggle, happiness, both of us laughing because the words are free. It's back, my famished wonder booming, all the shining questions, puzzles, scars, delirious inconsistencies. I'm shoveling them up, shaking the light across the rediscovered land. Her fingers move, type another word, press the bar to speak. The words are spelling out, O-U-T. My daughter's here. I'm back. I'm running along the sand, hooting, singing it up. And that poem, which perhaps inspired the whole section on wonder, was written after my daughter, who is non-speaking, learned to type. And that opened up my mind to a completely new level of joy and surprise. The next one, The Mouse and the Hawk. When I was trying to decide which poems to read, I was thinking of coming after Richard, and you wouldn't know this from the section that he read, but later things become much darker with the dissolution of the monastery and Henry VIII's dark intervention. So it made me, just in the atmosphere and the sense of fear, think of this poem, The Mouse and the Hawk. I'm a mouse, racing beneath the hawk's almighty gaze, eyes rippling my fur, invisible, tingling caress. Getting smaller, smaller. I'm a running, flashing light. I'm a legged torch, burning a trajectory of fear across the choppy ground. The grass blades of the forest, my skin's thinning, my furs sliding off, lifting in a neat, evacuated pocket. I'm prey, rising into the uncanny, perforated sky. I wake up, gasping, running my hands over the blankets, striping them with fear, waiting for the next dream to arrive, a belittling, scooping terror. Each terror dropped at an equal distance, parcels streaming faster than my arms can take them. Stop thinking, I tell myself. Don't think, just count. And I'm off, running again. The grass disappears, drops flat in a single breath against the soil. I'm exposed. The hawk beams down, prepares to dive, to spear me in its flawless beak. Now I'm in the murder. I pray, turn me around, give me the talons, make me the predator. Let me wreak small murder and surprise another animal in its cowering blood. The next one, a demonstration, which is also from the Awe and Wonder section. It could be paired with another poem, which I'm not reading because it's rather long, but that introduces the cat, who was actually a kitten that I encountered when I was an artist in residence at a nature reserve in Kentucky. So this second poem is called A Demonstration. The second poem about Elijah, that is. A demonstration. Rottweilers. Two slow black boulders, foggily curious. I'm afraid they will scoop him up, eat him like jam. The kitten lying on the stoop. Elijah, a tiny jar of light. Elijah sees them, stares them down, bursts into his greater beast, fearless, an animal starting gun. Take this, you fiends, pow, bam, splat. He's spitting, his legs are stiff, his back is arched. He's an exaggerated creature, drawn by someone who can barely hold a pencil. Stiff legs on springs, ludicrous wound up fur. The dogs fade to whimper. Elijah steeples and explodes. The dogs go up in smoke. I put a saucer down and watch the kitten lap a little milk into the delicate pink grotto of his mouth. Who needs a self-help book when you've witnessed such a demonstration? That actually really happened, and I've never been able to forget it. I'll read Shatterproof next. And this one is from a short section of the book called Anxieties. Very different from the awe and wonder section. And there are a few poems in this book, The Apple Tree, which remember what it was like to paint and to draw from the middle of that experience, now that I'm spending most of my time writing. Shatterproof. 1. I'm packing my old drawing things away, coming across the ruler. Shatterproof, it says. Who is? Who isn't faintly chipped? Who isn't in need of constantly supporting drifts of sugar? Shatterproof. It cannot be broken, but it can be fractured, like a window shield, the glass dividing into stranded cells. The effect is known as crazed. I pick up the ruler, hold it in my palm, trying to transfer the strength, or perhaps the memory, putting the weight of it back in my hand, of being young, and knowing that when I lifted my hand for another charcoal slash, a slam of the black line down, a little of the dust sputtering, when my wrist ripped across the page, getting the line of the chin down in a single swipe, bending from the hip, feeling the power pushing through, preparing to bring my hand round again, knowing that I'd need just 2 seconds and round again, no hesitation, drawing the spin of the pelvis, the jut of the knee. It was all so fast, the living of Keen, and I was the commander. Dynamic poses, they called them. I could study the model for a few beats. Then I knew how to pull it off and round again, dragging the stick of charcoal, rolling it over, flicking it through the bone of the shoulder, building up the human. I wouldn't make it palatable or proficient. I'd make it old-fashioned beautiful, wild, left over, bristling like a field of stubble, introverted layers, glittering, half-cut. I'd make it glinting, hard, streaked, broken shafts of corn, because when I drew, I knew I was exempt. I was shatterproof. 2. Eraser, pencil sharpener. I'm jamming them back in. The tools, the debris of that other life. All the threads I can't hold on to. The tensile strength I thought I'd be. The female spider slinging lines of silk from every post, waiting to catch the model or the lover racing through. The charcoal crumbles as I shove it into the case and prepare to zip it up. And this is the other poem about being a painter that I'm going to read. And it's called Life Jacket. And this is actually the last poem in the Awe and Wonder section. I'll say a little bit about it afterwards, I think. Life Jacket. Mine. It is pure, this memory. I sink down into it. Yet it is hard to get the difficulties clear, to strike them cleanly, match after match. I remember the suck and breath of the water advancing and receding, the hairy, rinded flesh clinging to the stony walls. I remember painting in the cave, sitting inside the scooped out rock, sitting on a stone ledge, the water lapping over my booted feet, the crinkling light. I remember painting in a cave, the chilly wetness spreading through my thighs, my knees flaring outwards, crooking sharply into flaking walls, a canvas balanced on my knees, a life jacket with brushes stuck through the belt, pulling each one out of my soft armor, my inflatable skin. This is the closest I can come to swallowing the painting. I must change into a different creature, not relying on names or words that I throw over the landscape, using them like nets to haul the truth home. Always restless to stand up with an explanation, I need to become invertebrate, an octopus, perhaps, trailing my delighted limbs across these trenches filled with easy spilling pigment. That poem was inspired by one of my favorite painting experiences. On the coast of Ireland, I painted inside a cave at the edge of the water, and it was a really extraordinary feeling of just being absorbed into the landscape and melting into it, and boundaries going away. The next one is Witch. That's Witch, and that's from the final section of the book, which was inspired by COVID, by the experience of living through COVID. Witch. The year when death came axing through the land, when each tall life was felled and wrapped, and sparks of mist love jumped the tracks. Old words reliving, plague, pestilence, the dreaded random that we try to remake into marketable legend because arbitrary pain becomes indecent. The year I kept making the same cup of coffee with worshipful diligence, as if through this attention I could renew, remake the day, begin again, force the ravenous spite of death to reconsider. Let me measure out the grounds more carefully. Let me use a different measure. This time I'll smooth the grounds with the side of my hand. This time I'll use an unbleached filter. This time, and each time I start to make a different cup, hoping to watch the steam rise against the background of a different kitchen, a room dropped down in a safe land. One day I start to brew and catch myself. I'm standing at the sink, watching a deer nudge the hoard of grass below the window. Watching my reflection, I notice I've become a witch. There in the glass is a woman bent upon brewing the perfect potion, hoping that by the faintest grass blade of adjusted balance, she can cheat the tally. She can protect her own, send grief to someone else's door. Tasting the latest brew, I shake my head, unsatisfactory. I wait while the world outside remains fathomlessly, agnostically cruel. Then I measure out the grounds again and climb the stairs to check on my twin compass points of love. I think that I only have a couple more minutes, so I'm going to read the last poem in the book, and this is called Bears. For Carol Stewart, the mudlarker in question. And this is a little note for those who don't know. Mudlarkers comb the mud of tidal rivers, searching for lost historical objects. 1. Sugar moles, I shout, mudlarking. I'm not sure why this fills me with delight. This is during COVID, the first winter. Frozen light cutting through the glass, covering the floor with its dead white chill, looking down at my slow-filled hands, feeling snow melt on my thin neck. My friend fished them out of the Thames, darting the beak of her hand, winkling for grubs of silver and gold in the congenial slime. What is a sugar mold? I ask. It's made of copper. It's a cone. They use them to pour sugar in. Look it up. On the internet, I find an image, a dented brown cone. It looks like an animal's snout, a bear's nose. I watch a clip of bears fattening for winter. Sugar cones. Why, I ask her, haven't I come across them in fairy tales? Isn't a sugar cone as worthy as a spindle or a thorn? I listen with my daughter to a book about the Arctic. We sit on the edge of the bed. I listen to her heavy breath. I wonder if we have enough fat to survive the cold time, the time for eating and preserving. I tell myself to hold the sugar cone until it melts in my hands. 2. I am hungry. There's a pastry I remember called a bear claw. It's made with almonds and sugar. And there's another, cache-museau, or in English, hide in the muzzle. I press the arrow to hear the next chapter. We go on listening in silence to the voice, only the voice, and the sound of my amazement flying, in the sort of gratitude that cooks in the stomach, like silk from a spider. And I listen as the voice tightens the enchantment, and I think of bears in their dark snug, and I know now that she understands every word. This is the first time we've listened to a book together since Stella learned to speak again, since she typed herself back into her voice, her fingers on the tablet, on the keyboard. She was content. We listened for hours that day, all the way through, in peace, tunneled in the cave of her breath. Climb out of the upstairs den, meet the spring. Buds sprout, tiny green claws. Clear the way. We're coming. And that's the last one. Thank you.
Thank you so much to both of you. And now I would like to invite any questions. If you have a question, we would ask that you type it into the chat window. You could also raise your hand, use the hand raise function, and I can ask for you to unmute, which will allow you to unmute your microphone and ask the question. Either way will work. And our first question just came in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and straight to that. And Richard and Catherine, I'm going to pull you up and pin you to the screen so that you are visible. Uh-oh, I've lost Catherine.
I'm here. I can see myself.
There we go. Okay, there we go. All right, so this first question is for you, Catherine. I noticed the bird's illustration of the book cover and on the poster behind you. I'm curious to know what spiritual connection you have with these creatures and what symbolism they carry in your poetry.
Oh, that's interesting. I do absolutely love birds. As far as on the cover, because I don't want to give too long an answer, as far as the cover goes, when I knew that I was going to call the book The Apple Tree, I went through lots and lots of images of apple trees and apples and twigs, and somehow none of them really seemed very fresh or memorable. And so then I started to think about things like apples with worms coming out of them and rotting apples and apples in paintings. And then, so I was taking a deep dive into the internet, and then I came across this really beautiful image, which is a print. I think it might be a colored lithograph by an Australian artist. And it was called Parrots in the Apple Trees. And I loved it because it was not an association that I would normally make, parrots with apples. So it had a slightly startling quality. And I also thought that the yellow and red and purple and magenta carried something of awe and wonder in them. So that was why I chose the parrots in the cover. Birds do have a lot of importance for me. I think, especially in my first book, The Receipt for Lost Words, which is about witnessing my daughter's original loss of language. Birds appear a lot in that. There's a lot of significant bird appearances in that, but
Thank you. I'm gonna bounce around a little bit, but I should get to everything. One for Richard. Can you share a photo of the cover of the new book or an image of the cover of the new book? You're muted right now, Richard. Just
I'm looking. Go to another question.
okay. I'll give Catherine her next question while you're looking. Thinking about your witch poem, how is the current political climate influencing your poetry? Heavy question immediately.
Yes, very heavy question. It's interesting that it's linked to that poem. As far as that poem goes, so it was written before the current administration or regime. Oh gosh, it's hard to know where to start. I would say that the poems that I'm writing now, because I'm working on a new manuscript, and the poems that are in the book that I'm talking about, the apple tree, were written before Trump got reelected. So the current poems that I'm working on are not explicitly inspired by what we're going through politically, but then how can you really live through one day without thinking about what we're going through? So I know that they definitely influence things like my level of energy, my ability to be hopeful or not. So, and then sometimes a feeling that we have to make something beautiful as a protest, which might sound a little corny, but I think that's true. We have to hold on to poetry and beauty and things that can't be measured in money or strength. So it has an effect, but perhaps not an obvious one.
Thank you. Richard, have you discovered a shareable version of the cover? Yes.
Okay. This is, I can't remember what this is in France or Spain. There aren't many monastery cloisters left intact in England because when Henry VIII dissolved the monasteries, typically they were knocked down as much as possible immediately so the monks could not return. There are a few that are somewhat intact, but most are in ruins. The first thing they would do would be to strip off the lead off the roof and out of the window panes and melt that down and carry it off. But that's the cover. Yeah.
Well, while you're talking a little bit about that, the facts you just shared, the next question was, can you share your research process a bit and how you immersed yourself in Simon's era?
I just read a ton of stuff. If I could turn my computer around, you'd see the bookcase, but I don't know, 100, 120 books in my bibliography. And it's the kind of thing where you might read half of a book and you find one detail that brings something to life. So that's kind of worth it. Also, I did read a fair number of books by ancient and medieval authors on their experience of faith, because I wanted to get at how faith operated on a day-to-day basis for people in their lives. We tend to focus on doctrine looking back, but for a lot of people, it was a crucial part of how they survived. And I was really interested in that.
Great. It's wonderful. Thank you. And for you again, did this second book in any way come out of the first book?
The first book is another sonnet narrative about the plague pandemic. Um, I don't know. I was writing sonnets. I kept on writing sonnets. The only two things I can think of as the origin for this book are one, when I was a kid, finding out that very few people in the Middle Ages could read, but monks could. And I thought, well, that would be a benefit. And then actually, Steve and Jane are here and others, knowing a lot of print journalists as the internet came into being and kind of edged print journalism more toward the margins, I kept thinking of how late medieval, early modern monks fell as the printing press made book copying a fairly obsolete occupation and a way of life changed. That's about all I can say.
Great, thank you. Um, any more questions coming in? I'll give it a second here. Richard, I just have a follow-up to a previous question of my own is how much invention is there? Because obviously there's not a pure record and you're telling a narrative that a narrative isn't always you're not always going for absolute fact, but you still seeking some sort of truth from it without necessarily worrying about absolute facts. I wonder where that line is for you.
It's fuzzy. I did try to avoid obvious anachronism, um, having people think in ways that just couldn't have been the case. Um, but obviously, I can't know. It was my best guess after doing a lot of research and thinking. But there were another person who's here, Mary Fuhrer, sent me a book about a set of chess pieces that then became the ones I describe in the book because I couldn't have imagined anything as weird as the ones shown in these illustrations.
Yeah. Thank you. Any final questions? Give it a couple seconds here in case anyone's frantically typing. But if not, we will wrap up here in just a moment. Oh, wait, here we go. For Catherine. Oh, two. There we go. We'll use up the last of our time here, I bet. So for Catherine, you write about such deeply personal experiences and emotion. What is the process like of giving yourself permission to share them?
It's difficult. It's really two separate things. I write the poem that I want to write or that is making itself felt. And usually when I start writing a poem, it comes very quickly and insistently, which doesn't mean that I won't rewrite it. But so I just follow along with what's happening. I try not to stop myself too much when I'm writing. And when it's finished, I just try not to let myself think about the fact that maybe this means that I'll be sharing it if I publish it. But I'm actually quite a private person, so I do find it hard to think about sharing really private things. Perhaps that's why poetry is slightly self-protective, because it's not always completely clear what you mean, more than a memoir, for example. But yeah, I do struggle a bit with the fact that my poems are personal, and I honestly wish they weren't. I wish I could write poems about things that were outside of my experience, but I think it's just what I'm able to do.
Thank you. And we have one more for Richard here. Richard, in your introduction, you showed a clear respect for a faith tradition that is so very far from most modern traditions and from my own. Did your research shape the way you think about others' faith practices today?
It's a good question. Probably to some extent, in that people believe things generally that help them maintain psychological equilibrium, and understanding how that works for them seems to me really important and really, really interesting. So that even if the beliefs might not make sense to me rationally, what they do for an individual embedded in a particular culture is always of interest. And later in the book, the characters go through the Protestant Reformation. And it was fascinating thinking about what happened as from the top down, England got pushed from Catholicism into some sort of Protestantism, and then into a more extreme Protestantism, and then back into Catholicism, and then back into Protestantism again. And I was thinking about what is the impact of a top-down forced change, at least in practice, if not necessarily in belief, and how that might actually make the whole enterprise of having a religious faith feel a little more relativistic, or a little more shaky, or a little bit more open to question, which could be good and bad, difficult and easy. Anyway, those are some thoughts.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It looks like I think that was the end of the questions I saw in the chat. Is there anything else either of you would like to say or share before we wrap up for this evening?
Just thank you very much to everyone for coming.
Yes, I'll second that. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you for everyone to coming. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Catherine. This has been a beautiful evening. And I hope we'll see the two of you. I hope we'll see the rest of you in the audience all again very soon, either at the center or virtually in an upcoming virtual program. So thank you all again, and we will see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Zach.
you.
Have a good night.